It's the second oldest, one family owned, same location place in Kentucky.
Well, he was my father-in-law, and he was a very nice man, and he started Check's Cafe in, I believe it was 1942. He bought it from a guy named Check Sumter, and that's why it has the name Check's Cafe. And he lived there pretty much. He worked every day in the year except for Christmas, and he worked from probably 9 in the morning until 10 at night.
He'd come home to have dinner, and then he would go back in and collect the money. And he carried the money in a cigar box. And I often wondered why he never got knocked in the head, but he never did. He was my father. So he initially started in business on Shelby Street in a German bar, 800 South Shelby. And then somewhere in the 1950s, I think, checks became available.
He used a bowl to put his money in, and he had it sitting on the counter, and then he trusted people. They could come up and order, they didn't even have to pay, and he would just allow them to go sit down, and then later they would come up to him and they'd tell him what they had, and then he'd take their money from them and give them change. But he didn't have a computer. He just had an old-time cash register, and he used a bowl to make change.
Right. Well, my dad did operate the store in a very, not quite cavalier way, but initially, people that came into checks, they ordered verbally. There was nothing written down. You paid at the bar, and there was no tax. You know how we pay for things with some
It was
tax.
tax, but Joe
But
was the
still,
one, yeah, he didn't include that on the
That's
bill.
right.
He paid it.
right, yeah, he paid the tax, but and then waitress would just come out of the kitchen with an order, and she would just yell who ordered the,
Yeah.
and she'd list the 3 or 4 things, and somebody would raise their hand and say that I think that's my order, and that's basically the way it ran.
And I think the clientele really liked that. I mean, it was so different.
My dad had a lot of, of good memories. They were always teasing him, about being a king. So they put this toilet seat up on the wall, sort of as a symbol. Well, certainly early on with my dad, it was the watering hole. And not just for beer. I mean, that's where all the news got passed. It was practically, the format for the newsletter for Germantown, because, anything that was happening in Germantown was talked about in checks. So it really was a neighborhood bar. And my dad would get a lot of free advertising on the radio because, they would be on the radio in the morning and somebody would say, well, going to checks for that bean soup about noon, we'll be there.
Joe's wife, Nana Mary,
Yeah. She worked the store both before he died and then after he died. I guess she felt like we needed some help for a while, and so she came in and did some cooking. And some of the recipes that we use at Checks today were really hers. He just was such an icon in that neighborhood. They flew the flag at half-mast when he died. He died very young, my dad did. He was 67, and he had been having some problems breathing. He had been a smoker, but he had given up smoking 17 years before he died. And he was at Checks on that Sunday. He had an oxygen tank with him, and he sat in the car and did his paperwork. And then he got ready to go into Checks, and he was going into the hospital on Monday. Nobody thought that he wouldn't come home, and so I think everybody was really, really, really shocked. Of course, the family had a few days to wrap their head around it. He did quite well for his family.
Yeah, pretty soon after that, I had to figure out how we would fit in or what we could do, and it involved having the confidence, in the business. And, Joe, Sandy's father, ran it for years, and he knew what had to be done. But the rest of us were all learners. I think he was known for low prices on things.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, to do that and make a living out of it.
And you have to have a lot of people coming through the door.
Watching him talk to clients and how he interacted them was really something different.
Well, when his father passed away, he inherited checks with his two sisters, although Joe, his dad, wanted to sell checks.
Well, I don't think I ever decided I wanted to be. I just it just like inherited it, whatever you want to say. Inherited checks.
But you wanted checks. You didn't want your father to sell
I did,
checks.
but I felt more like I wanted to keep it in the family, so I worked, to keep it going.
And then as the years went by, we realized it's very difficult to operate a business with that many people. So we bought the business from the two sisters. So then we were the sole owners of Chex Cafe.
We just decided that we couldn't afford to stay in Chex anymore. And my brother was willing to buy it. So we just said, okay, that's what we'll do. We'll just get out.
Restaurant business is hard. You assume that there will be some stealing, but you just sort of get over that kind of thing. I don't know that my dad ever had that problem because I think he knew those people that worked for him so well that, they just wouldn't have done that. I think John's doing a good job. Your dad's in there helping. But it really does, I think it's a business that takes a lot of family because you can trust family.
Well, honestly, I don't think it has. The environment inside the restaurant has not changed. Pretty much, what I know about the restaurant, it's always been a very wild mix of people, I guess you could say, all the way from, the lower class to the highest of class. It's when you come in on any given day, you see people that are, your electricians or your plumbers or your school teachers or whatever it may be, and then you have, I know a lot of guys that are very, very wealthy. That's kind of their stop where they come in here. So it really has always been that way from my understanding, and it's stayed that way.
One of the reasons Chex did so well back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is because he used a lot of neighborhood women to work with him over the lunch hour. Things would be really busy from 11 to 2. And so these women would come in to help, and then he'd basically say, okay, you can go home now. Most people wouldn't operate a restaurant like that now. They were a big part of Chex, and I think the success of
I
that.
know there's a lot of Germantown natives that are held in high regard. Oh yeah. There's people that have been coming here since they were little kids with their grandparents, and now their grandparents bringing their grandkids here. So it's almost 80 years of tradition. So it's pretty awesome to be part of that.
Yeah,
Bill Tinker, yes.
He was supposed to be the mayor of Schnitzelburg.
Really?
Yeah, he was.
It was really just a
Yeah,
name they gave him because he was in there so much. There's a wall down at Chex that has all of the original people,
the old timers.
the old timers that were there when Poppy was there. Your great grandfather, Bill Tinker's one of them. He's on that picture.
And then at the bar, they have like a little piece of metal with their name engraved on it, where they used to sit.
One of the things with your dad, we started the college night to bring in more revenue because of during COVID we took a major hit. A lot of businesses went out of business because of COVID and the effects of it. We were lucky enough to not have that happen. We did go in debt for a while and we did hurt for a while, but we pulled out of it, and so now we're utilizing our building and during hours that we don't normally operate, and things are looking good. I think they go hand in hand. It's basically it's kind of like living two lives. During the day we're a family restaurant, and we utilize that, and we utilize the Chex as a family restaurant because that's what it was built on. And then at ninth, we just switch over and, cater to a different demographic, and be able to pull revenue from them utilizing our building, providing a safe place for college students to come hang out and, let loose and have a good time.
Agree with that.
Yeah, we agree with that. We're trying to, you asked how the pandemic has affected checks, and it's been disastrous. If it hadn't been for the money that the government gave us, the free money, we might not have made it. But we did, and we're still moving along. But the pandemic also killed several of our timers that came in there forever. We're realizing that a lot of our people that have come in for years are getting older, and so we're trying to attract younger people. So that's the reason for the college nights, along with the fact that kids are crazy and they spend a lot of money, which, I think is silly, but that's what they do.
We typically have an older crowd. I would say on our average customers, plus 50. Lately, we've been bringing back, some college nights, which the age gap is tremendous. Our average customers 50 plus, and now on any given Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, the average customer is 21, 22. Yeah, so one of my big things that I've always tried to do is keep everything as the same as possible. I don't like change, and I think when you have something that works, you don't try to fix it. So yes, we've expanded a bunch. We were, I guess when I took it over, we were probably at like 2,200 square feet of usable space, and now we're over 7,000. So it's a lot bigger, but we try to keep everything very similar.
So see, I don't know when, John, when all the remodeling took place, probably at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, the stuff that's in the back was not there.
What I considered the biggest change in checks, we instituted that computer system, and that was a big deal. Again, that probably was, I guess, early 1990.
It became a little bit more like other places. It never totally lost that home-like flavor.
The year after COVID hit, the initial year after COVID hit, we didn't have any. And then after that, that's when we decided to start, having the walks again. And, I could tell immediately that they weren't as, festive and as bountiful as it was before, the years prior to that, so.
Yeah, since I think
I
it probably will
don't
this year.
know. It depends on who buys the other restaurants in that area and whether they want to participate, really.
Oh, I understand that. A lot of the restaurants have changed ownership down there, and some of them didn't participate. Yeah. Maybe it won't be as big as it used to be, but we'll still do it. So we don't know, how it's going to turn out, but we'll still be doing it.
It's kept that community sort of looking forward. The fact that they're using the outside space, I think, is really good. I don't think Dad used the outside space very much.
I think that it's a great thing, especially, with the pandemic and everything that's happened. It's kind of divided everybody, separated everybody. It's a chance for everybody to come together in the neighborhood. So I think it's a great thing. Now it's less people. It's not as big of a festival as it was before. Before, within the one day we would have a sea of people, outside, and it would be shoulder to shoulder in here. Now it's it's still decent, but it's not like it was. I don't think that there will ever be that norm again. I think it'll be a new norm, which I hate that phrase, the new normal is, but it is what it is.
What has it done for this community? Same exact people every single day. And they have developed the best relationships with each other. You cannot come here and be lonely. You come here and you make friends and you want to come back. It makes a lot of people feel a lot better about situations they may or may not be in.
But part of it was staying around. Not that they were drinking that much, but it was companionship. One of the reasons people showed up was to see their friends.
Nowadays, retirees meet at McDonald's to have coffee in the morning. I think Chuck served that purpose back in the 60s and 70s. They'd come in at 10 o'clock and sit there for 4 hours and just shoot the bull.
Oh, I think it's always been positive. I don't think there's been a negative.
Well, we've always tried to run it as a very nice family restaurant place you can bring your kids and have a down-home meal, as I like to say.
I believe that we've, as a business, brought the, helped bring the neighborhood back from where it originally started. So originally it was a lot of middle class, semi-wealthy people that live in this neighborhood. Factory workers, plumbers, electricians, that type of stuff, doctors, lawyers, all kinds of things. And then the neighborhood kind of got away from that when basically the rental property and rental property, a lot of times property values can go down. So a lot of people, I think, are under the belief that the neighborhood now is being gentrified, but in actuality, it's not. It's just that it's going back to where it was and where it should have always been, which is a nice middle-class neighborhood.
The regulars, the people, they make this place.
It was the history and the neighborhood, the people, our loyal customers, people that have been coming here, like I said, since they were little kids with their grandparents. Those are the people that kept this place alive.
I don't know. I guess when I think about Checks and
Family tradition.
Louisville neighborhood institution.
My life is pretty much Checks.
It's kind of my foundation.
it was my life. I think about all the people that work there and how much they invested in working there.
What restaurant do you go into did you see chess being played?
Yes, almost every day.
It's just always been a family business, so there's always lots of good memories. And I'm sure a lot of people have a misconception about working with family, but for me, it's always been a good thing.
One thing that we've already talked about was the fellowship, and that, I think, without that, Checks wouldn't be there. It was the time spent there and the caring for one another.
Mm-hmm. Everybody knew everybody.
And it was a place lighthearted and laughter.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pop got it correct. Family tradition. We'd like to be able to hand it down to the family, and we're trying to keep it going so we can do that. Our fish sandwiches are fabulous. People need to come in and try them. UK people, along with the Louisville people.
It's very simple, yet dramatic.